Have you ever seen a friend or a sibling with an Android phone and wondered what it's all about? Maybe you're just too attached to your iPhone to ever want to switch, but you would still like to learn a little bit more about it. Well, this is a video for you. Hi, my name's Assad, and this is Android Decoded. This is a series dedicated to introducing the Android operating system to all newcomers, but especially those coming from an iPhone. This first video will go over the fundamentals, like what is Android and why are there so many Android phones. Let's start with that question. Android is an OS that was created by Andy Rubin in 2006. Google acquired Andy and his team, and they continued to work on creating a next-generation mobile OS. Their development process was greatly influenced by the release of the iPhone in 2007, which revolutionized the touch computing model. The first version of Android officially released with the HTC G1 in 2008, and while it was a very exciting time for some people, it didn't exactly blow people away like the iPhone. However, what was exciting about Android was what it promised. It included many innovative features, such as the first open software market. Android, while feature-heavy, wasn't quite the looker for many years, but it has gone through many iterations since then and refined its design. The current version is called 6.0 Marshmallow. Each version gets a letter of the alphabet in sequence and a dessert name. What makes Android different from the software that runs on the iPhone, called iOS, is that Android is open source. What this means is that anybody can see and use the code behind it and run Android on their device, at least in theory. This has meant that every company that has wanted to make a smartphone has largely gone with licensing Android from Google and building their own hardware to run it. In reality, all Android devices ship with a mix of that open source code and proprietary software. What I mean by proprietary is that unlike the rest of Android, for which the code is available and freely usable, a manufacturer's own apps and services will only be usable on the devices they wish for it to be. For example, Samsung may load their dialer or SMS app in the place of Google's solution, provided with Android. Although you might hear that someone's got a Sony or a Samsung, a Galaxy, HTC, all of these companies are actually using Android as a software basis for their devices, and they're all thus Android phones. In addition, unlike Apple, who releases just 2 phones a year, most Android companies will release a variety of devices every year at different price points to serve different parts of the market and different parts of the world. However, almost every manufacturer will also release a major device that is top of the line and competes with the iPhone. These are called flagship phones. Let's take a quick look at the major manufacturers and their flagships. The largest and top-selling Android manufacturer is Samsung, and their flagship line is called the Galaxy S, with the most current iteration being the Galaxy S7. Similarly, there is the HTC One line, the LG G line, the Sony Xperia line, the Moto X line, and the Google Nexus line. Wait a second, you might ask. Google makes the software but also makes hardware? Well, yes, and I'll tell you why. You might have noticed that all the pictures I've shown of Android so far might not look like what you've seen on a phone, and that's because of skins. Since Android is open source, manufacturers can take that code and add to it in various ways, but most notably in adding their own skin on top. They usually do this for branding reasons so that their software and hardware will coalesce into one recognizable product rather than just as a frame for showing off Google's OS. It's also meant to differentiate their devices from every other Android phone in the market in consumers' minds. This is what Android looks like in its native form, straight from Google. Here's how it looks on the latest Samsung, HTC, Sony, Motorola, and LG. You'll notice that some look drastically different from native or stock Android, while others are much closer. This is entirely up to the manufacturer to decide. Samsung has commonly been on the side of heavy skinning. And this is where Google's Nexus program comes in. The Nexus program was an initiative launched by Google in 2010 to deliver Android to developers and consumers in a pure unskinned form. Even though the phones themselves carry Google's branding, Google do not make the devices. They partner with another company to design the hardware. The current Google Nexus devices are called the Nexus 5X and the Nexus 6P, made by LG and Huawei respectively under the guidance of Google. This is a nutshell explanation of the Android hardware ecosystem. If you see someone using a phone other than the iPhone, it's probably running Android. Now, let's also take a quick look at how Android hardware generally differs from an iPhone. Keep in mind that because Android is available to virtually any manufacturer, there is a vast ocean of differences between Android hardware if you were to look at it from a historical perspective. But in recent years, major flagships have kind of been moving towards the general trend, and we can see how this compares to the iPhone. This is the iPhone 6, and this is the newest Google Nexus device, the Nexus 6P. On both, you'll find a power button on the right. While the iPhone places the volume keys on the left side, they're on the right side on most current Android flagships. The iPhone also has a silent rocker, which is absent from almost all Android devices. The more notable omission on Android is the lack of a front-facing home button. It's always graced the front of the iPhone, but out of all the manufacturers, it's been a staple only of Samsung's Galaxy S flagships. The home button also houses a fingerprint sensor. Again, Samsung is really the only one to follow Apple in placing it on the front under the home button, while most manufacturers are placing it on the back of the device where the finger naturally rests. On the bottom of both, you'll find the charging port. All of Apple's devices use a proprietary connector called Lightning cable, which only works with other Apple devices. Almost all Android devices, on the other hand, use a standard micro USB cable. However, the newest flagships are now turning from micro USB to the USB-C standard, a port that's more symmetrical, offers faster charging, and faster data transfer rates. The Nexus 6P is one of the only phones which has adopted this new standard, but others are soon to follow. The headphone jack is on the top of the iPhone, and on Android phones it could be on the top or bottom. As for the speakers, they've been on the bottom of the iPhone and for a lot of Android devices, but many have also placed them on the back. A cool trend in recent years has been front-facing speakers, essentially started by HTC with the HTC One, but now found in Sony, Motorola, and Nexus devices. Front-facing speakers allow for a greater multimedia experience, with generally higher volume directed at the user. The last point I wanted to touch on was phone design, material, and construction. I'm not going to mince words here. Android phones, for most of its history, have been ugly chunks of plastic, compared to the graceful designs and construction of the iPhone. But that's changed in recent years. More and more Android flagships are coming out with beautiful designs and metal and glass construction that matches, if not trumps, the iPhone. All this being said, we're left with the idea that Android has grown rapidly and vastly since its inception, and it continues to get better and better. The top Android phones today all rival the iPhone and exceed it in some areas. But hardware only gets you so far. A user's most important consideration will still be how well a phone's software serves their need. We'll look at that in the next episode and compare how Android and iOS are similar and different. That's all for now. Subscribe and like if you learned something new from this video, and leave a comment below for what else you would like to see covered in this series. Well, see you next time.